Hello Jackals, and thank you Hannah for the question. Now can we add particles along the ribbon path? Yes we can, I'll show you how to do that. Can we use a cylinder instead of the ribbon? We can also do that, I just don't know if it's the same result as what you wanted. But just so you get the idea, I'll show you first how to do it with a polygon. And it'll look something like this. So open the media pool, right click, make a new fusion composition, you can give it a name, also change the duration if you want, make it, put it onto the timeline, select it, and go into the fusion page. Now inside here I'll use a polygon, we need some particles, and we need to render them out, and this will be the media out. Now if you want the particles to stand out, you can also use a glow node. So this is the base composition. Now in the polygon, you can just make any line that you want. Then you can connect it to the emitter. So in the emitter tab, what you'll want to do is go into the region and change the region to a bitmap. Now in this case, you could also use a Bezier, and as you can see, it also stays connected, but we'll just see what the difference is. So in the particle emitter, we'll set the number to maybe 200. We'll set the velocity. I'll just use the velocity variance, make it something tiny. In the style, we'll change the color to color over life, and we can just make a bunch of points. So something like this. Now we still don't see anything. So in the polygon, you actually have to set the border width, just like this, and you could also uncheck the solid if you wanted to. Now as you can see, we still don't see anything, so in the emitter, you actually want to go to the region and change it from Bezier to a bitmap. And now you can see the particles, although they are tiny. And to make this a little bit more visible, let me just add a background at the end. So now we can actually see something, but the particles are all over the place because they spawn wherever this line is. So I actually want to animate this line. Maybe we'll shorten the length and we'll just then animate the position. So maybe something like this. So we'll animate it at the beginning, and then maybe this will be the ending animation. And if the particles are too big, you can simply change the border width, and you can also change the particle lifespan. So maybe 30 frames. So we could have it something like this, and what we could also do is at this point stop the emitter from emitting. So on frame 70, when the polygon animation comes to the end, the emitter will stop on the next frame. So we set the number to 0. So if you take a look at the animation now, it will finish like that. So this should give you an idea of what we want to do, but we want to do it with the ribbon node. So I'll make the same composition as I did in the previous video. So we'll add ribbon node. This ribbon node needs a background. Because this is 3D, we need the render node so that we can actually see it. And this also needs to change from software to OpenGL. Now let me just change the background so we can actually see it better. I'll change it to white. And let's make some adjustments. Increase the number of lines, line thickness. We also need the subdivisions, and make it something like this. As for the start and the end position, this is the 3D space, so we need a camera to actually see it. Connect it to a merge node, and now we can position the camera back. So let's see what we'll see. Something like this, and in the ribbon node, we can simply change the position to how we want. But what I'll also do is I'll add a bender node. I'll add 2 of them, just like in the previous video. I'll twist the X values. And I'll simply copy this node, paste it, and this time I'll bend it on the Y-axis. And I'll simply move the camera so that I can actually see the whole composition. And if it's too big, I can also size it down. So I can use a transform 3D. I'll simply change the scale so it fits inside the camera view. Now what we need to do is to animate the lines. Now what we did in Polygon is we animated the position and adjusted the length. And how you can do this with ribbon is basically in the background node. So I'll make a gradient at 2 points. I'll first position this one at the end just so you can see the difference. Now the middle points will be white. The left and right points will be black, but with the alpha set to 0. So you get a fading like effect at the beginning, at the end. And you could set the offset to animate this. And that's exactly what we'll do. But I don't want the whole ribbon to be visible. So how I'll fix that is I'll simply position this node and this one to here. So now I'll only have a section of the ribbon be visible at a time, so that the particles will only be generated once a section of the ribbon is visible. And if a section is too long, we can simply shorten this even more. So maybe something like this. Now I'll find a beginning position. So this is my beginning position. I'll start the animation maybe at frame 8. Animate it, and the animation will end at frame, let's say 90. And this has to come all the way till the end. So at this point, 1. So this is the animation, and now we have to connect it to the particle system. Now let's just check what we see in the media out. So I'll disconnect it from this point and connect it to here and display it on the left side. So this is what we currently see in the render node. You see the same in the media out. It is at the moment. So now what we need to do is to connect the particle system to this. So let's grab a particle emitter and render node, connect them. Inside here we'll select a bitmap, connect it, and display it on right just so we see something. And we do see particles being generated. Now we may need to adjust the lifespan, so I'll set it to 30 as it was in the Polygon example. And set the number to 200, actually maybe less, I'll just leave it at 10. Okay, so now if I connect this to the media out, I can't, because this is a 3D. I could set it to 2D, but as you can see, we don't see a lot. So in this case, we could adjust the number of particles being emitted. We can switch this back to 3D, add another 3D render node, display this. And as you can see, it actually displays differently as it did with just the particle rendered. So in this case, it's a little bit zoomed out. And what you may want to do in this case is to add the camera node. So let's see what we'll actually get. What do we see? Nothing, because the camera is now in the particles. So I'll simply drag it back, and I'll also increase the particles maybe to 100. So actually let's go to 200. So I need to position the camera because the particles get cut off. Now the last thing that I did is I went to the particle emitter. So you don't have just white dots. You can change the style to a blob if you so want. But as you can see, it doesn't really change anything. So let's see what he'll do. Instead of waiting, I'll just lower the number of particles to 10. I think that's the issue. Ooh, so we have big blobs. So change the size of the blobs. You can also change size over life, adjust the fade controls, and also change the color, and I'll just use the color variance, so something like this, and we can now simply connect this to the media out. So that's how you can apply particles along the ribbon path. Now let's take a look how you can use a cylinder. Now I'll find the cylinder in the Shape 3D node. Shape 3D, instead of a plane, we'll use a cylinder. If you want to display it, you won't see much. You will if you zoom out, but you need the 3D render node. Now this is just 2D, so you don't need a camera 3D node. Select the Merge 3D and zoom the camera out. Let's see what we see. Nothing much. Maybe I'll scale this down a little bit. So adjust the height and adjust the radius. We can increase the base subdivisions if we need to. And we can use this angle to make an animation later on. And as you can see at the moment, we don't actually have a bottom and a top cap, which you can enable here. So this is the bottom one and this is the top one. For the animation that you saw at the beginning, this yellow particle animation is a cylinder that doesn't have any bottom or top caps. So I'll simply leave this disabled. And what we want to do is connect the Shape 3D node with any kind of object directly to the particle emitter. So use render node so we can display it. And to connect the Shape 3D to the particle emitter, you'll have to go to the region and change the region to be a mesh. We can connect it now, and if I display it, so you can see that we now have particles inside and outside of the cylinder, and you have to play with the options here. In this case, the volume is selected by default, so if you just want this to be on the surface, select surface. And now you basically have the outline of the cylinder. And now if I go to the Shape 3D node and use the angle, you will see that this actually changes the animation. So you can now animate this, maybe frame 10, and at frame 80, something like this. And then the particles also stop spawning at frame 81. Now this is just how the top view looks like. We also need to change the lifespan, so I'll set it to 30 again, just like in previous examples. And we can also use maybe 200 particles. And as for the velocity, we can give it some, but change the angle to 90 so the particles float up, or maybe minus 90 so they float down. Then you connect this to the merge node. What do we see? We see something, so you can play around with the camera or even adjust the size. So adjust the size, change the height, maybe change this to a blob, so style blob. We'll have a bunch of blobs, as you can see, maybe a bit too many of them. So we have 10 blobs. We can also adjust the fade. Again, color variance or change the color over life. So this is basically it. What you can then also do is to animate the camera so that it moves around the cylinder. If I just do it quickly, let's go to the transform. I'll use target. This will basically go around the center. So the camera will move in this direction. So let's use the translation and then just simply position it where we want it to be. And that's basically it. The last thing that I'll do is I'll simply connect all of the three effects that I've made. So we don't see which one. We don't see this one. It's in the back because this one is in the foreground. So I'll simply switch these two because this one has a black background. I could also simply set alpha to transparent, and this is what I got. And that's it. If you found the video helpful, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you want to see DaVinci Resolve and video editing content, and as a sneak peek, this is what we'll be making in the next video. And until next time, jackals, keep it digital.